think we're going live, so we'll just click that, and we'll click that, and we'll click that, and we'll click that, and then we'll just click that, and we'll just wait to see if anybody comes on board. Oh, I know what I'm going to do. I'm needing to share this with on my personal page, as it were.
How do I do that?
So I'm just hoping that if anybody is watching, can you just flick us a like so we know that we're just not talking to ourselves, because it would be highly, highly embarrassing if we're having this chat and nobody is watching. I was going to turn on my phone because I didn't want to have any interruptions. But now what I'm going to do is I'm going to
talking.
Just
Can I put it on my one?
Yes, I'm just going to double check that we are in fact live. Essential talent. Let's have a look here. Oh, we are. We are. So I'll go here and I'm going to share that with my newsfeed.
Yeah.
And we should be right.
Oh,
now you've disappeared. Where are you?
Oh, I'm coming back. Sorry. I'm back.
Don't do that to me. I've had enough technical problems as it is with this show. My God, I had a chat to Lee Hart.
To share it on my Facebook page.
I had a chat to Lee Hart the other day. We're live, by the way. I'll introduce you in a minute.
Yeah.
Man, what a cool guy. But we had huge technical problems to begin with, and we basically it was just a audio interview. But gee, what a clever man. Anyway, everybody, thanks so much for tuning in. I know that we scheduled it for 7 o'clock, but it's kind of, I've got to make dinner for my eldest boy, and
good man.
Dog starts playing up at 7 o'clock, so I thought we'd do it now, and people can tune in, and it's modern technology; they can watch it whenever they want, right? So this is my friend Scott Blanks, who I've known for, and 2 flies. Did you see that fly by there? There was a fly that just went. We've got 2 flies for the broadcast.
Oh, that's good technology. Is that like a drone? Good
technology. And Scotty Blanks has actually been described as the godfather of comedy, and he's probably a bit embarrassed by that because he's a fairly humble guy. But and comedians don't normally do nice things like that, like he's the godfather of comedy. But they do that because he's very well respected. He owns the Classic. So if you have never been to Auckland before, or you only go occasionally or whatever, you need to go to the Classic, which is in Queen Street by memory still. Is that right? Yeah. And Scotty owns that. And but he's also a producer. So when the comedy gala is on, he brings a lot of acts over, and he also got the Order of New Zealand Merit last year for services to comedy. So he's it when it comes to comedy in New Zealand. So how the hell have you been anyway? How have you been going with all of this bloody coronavirus lockdown?
Oh, you mean the kerfuffle?
The kerfuffle, yes. Coming close to the mic as much as you can.
Right, the kerfuffle we're currently experiencing. Yes.
Yes.
It's a bit of a dramatic change of pace for everyone in our industry, no matter whether you're in the comedy industry or just the events and entertainment industry. To go from go to woe in a matter of days is quite dramatic.
Yeah, it is. It's when did it sort of start to hit you? Was it just sort of leading into the lockdown? I mean, for me, Friday was a shocker. It was just like everything's cancelled or postponed.
No, I think I had some sort of inkling of about a month ago that you only had to, if you do anything like mathematical projections when you see things happening, you only have to extrapolate what you're seeing one day to imagine what it will be in 30 days' time. So I could see something coming. Difficult to know how dramatic it was going to be, but we started preparing for it at the Classic particularly as the rumbles about hygiene and all that sort of stuff came through, we started to react to that straight away. And really, we were pretty much tracking along with the government. And I was well prepared for the closure. I could see that happening about 10 days out. And as for the camp, yeah.
So that must be putting obviously a huge amount of pressure. And look, the thing is, we're all going through this. The entire country is going through this pressure, and but it must be very, very challenging. And correct me if I'm wrong, with comedians in particular, because so I run a speakers bureau, and we book comedians and musicians and keynote speakers, and we're sort of pivoting quickly to get keynote speakers at least online, virtual options and so forth. What is that noise? Is that from your end or mine?
I'm not sure. It's like a little clicking. I don't know. Yeah,
it's not Banjo. He's asleep on the couch.
Sounds
anyway,
like a microphone thing. Yeah,
that's all right. Like, it must be very hard as far as the comedians go, because don't you really need to feed off that live audience, or have I got that wrong? Are you working on something else?
No, that is exactly it. I mean, comedy is so much a live beast. And I mean, there are all sorts of different versions of comedy, but we specialize in stand-up comedy, and that is a live beast. And I'm not a great fan of recorded stand-up comedy. You lose about 50% of the funny when you're watching a comedian on TV or on stream or anything. So if you're watching a comedian on TV or on a stream and you are laughing, then I would highly recommend you go and see them live, because they'll be twice as funny live.
Yeah,
than they
absolutely.
are. So you've got to be a very, very good comedian to be able to, for your comedy to withstand the transfer from the live stage to a camera. And then you have to have very good camera work and editing to capture the same sort of atmosphere that you're creating in the live environment. You can't just have a locked off camera pointing at the stage. It's much more subtle than that. And it's filming and recording live comedy is a very special skill, and not everyone can do it very well. There are not, it takes time to learn how to do that, and to create just the right atmosphere and the position of the cameras to give the viewer at home a feeling that they're actually part of the viewing audience and not sort of remote from the stage.
So I'm talking to Scott Blanks. Scott Blanks, known as regarded as the godfather of comedy, owner of the Classic in Queen Street comedy, producer of comedy, brings a lot of comedians over for the gala, and also got recognised by the Queen last year. Hey, talk me through. Let's go back a step. How did you get into comedy?
That goes way back. I've been asked that a number of times, and of course, it can be a long or a short story. So I'll try and give you the short one.
No, make it long. We've got all night. We're all locked up. So.
As a teenager, a very young teenager, I was immediately taken with the likes of Monty Python. So my experience of comedy was not stand-up; it was more sketch-based, group-based comedy, and of course, British TV. And the likes of that. So in my 20s, I met up with Willie DeWitt in a nightclub, and we all competed in a funny comedy competition at Retro Nightclub in O'Connell Street, and the lovely Graham J. Smith who ran that nightclub, and he was like he was a real club man, and I was always in awe of because I didn't really know much about the nightclub industry. These mysterious people that ran nightclubs. But he ran the comedy competition in Retro on one of the off nights, which was a good lesson in itself about how to fill off nights in your nightclub with something like comedy. And most of the people who made up the original Funny Business group competed in that competition.
Dean Butler,
Dean Butler, Ian Harcourt, Peter Murphy, Willie DeWitt, and the host of those shows was Chris Hegan of the famous Hegan Entertainment family. And after that competition concluded, which Willie won, and I think his prize was a trip to Sydney to perform at the Sydney Comedy Store, we formed the group Funny Business, which was a 5-man comedy troupe, sort of like in cross between the Young Ones and Monty Python.
And what was your role in it?
I was the producer and the manager and whatever. I pushed the buttons.
I never knew that.
Yeah, we ran them. We ran fortnightly gigs on a Wednesday night at the Windsor Castle in Parnell, and the lovely Live Sound production company had a full band rig there. So we had a something like a 32 or a 64 channel desk at the back of the room for mixing bands that played at Windsor Castle Thursday, Friday, Saturday night. We did comedy on Wednesday. And I always thought it was funny that I'd sit there with this sort of 64 channel mixing desk, quietly mixing the first 4 channels of microphones and nothing else. The other 60 channels were empty. And,
so what year was this? What year were you doing this?
This is about 81, 82.
Wow. Oh, right.
Yeah.
Okay, man.
And so we ran fortnightly gigs there for quite a number of years. Of course, they got picked up and did 3 TV series eventually. So, and that was how I got into comedy in New Zealand, was the Funny Business Performing Troupe, and I was like the non-performing member. And then that segued into another super group that was a combination. You know, most of the people in this group, Comedy Fest, which was a combination of the performing troops of Facial DBX and Funny Business got together and created Comedy Fest. And once again, I was brought in as like the non-performing member. And again, my job was putting on the live shows, taking the money at the door, running the sound, while everyone else performed.
Did you ever want to perform yourself, or have you ever done stand-up comedy yourself? Because you are actually naturally a very, very funny guy, very dry sense of humor.
It's funny. The performing is an interesting part of it, but I became very much a producer kind of director kind of thing, because I used to do theatre, and I really loved when I moved from being the onstage performer to the director of the shows, and sometimes working in the marketing department for the shows. There was something just really rewarding out of being of directing and producing.
Yeah, right.
I love filling a room with people, of paying customers. I love it when they've paid. I prefer it when they've paid. I love filling a room with people who have paid for some entertainment, and then producing or directing or having some role in putting that entertainment on, and then seeing a whole lot of happy people go home at the end of the night, including paid performers and happy punters.
And you're clearly a very good businessman, because I can remember the Classic when it first started. There was a whole group of us sort of involved in it, and I was actually one of the bloody directors to begin with, by memory. And
definitely a shareholder.
Yeah, he was. Yeah, I was a shareholder. Yeah, and the thing is, it was kind of very bumpy start to it, wasn't it?
Well, we were.
My memory is
we were so enthusiastic when we opened, and of course we had lovely family members and friends chipping in their life savings to make up the original shareholding, which was about $200,000 short of the actual costs of opening the club. If I recall, we were horribly undercapitalized, but what we tried to do is carry that debt forward and service it with the income, the daily income, like the cash flow. But it just wasn't going to work. Eventually, after 3 years, the writing was on the wall that we just owed too many people, the IRD. We owed too many people money, and we couldn't responsibly continue on without being negligent directors. So we did what is very familiar to a lot of people out there. We did the self-liquidation. We liquidated the company ourselves, appointed our own liquidator, and we liquidated the assets and sold them on to. We split it up. We sold them on to me and a trust, and raised as much money from that as we could to pay back some of the money that we owed creditors. It happens a lot in business. It's going to be happening a lot this year, where the writing is on the wall for a lot of people in 2020. I tell you what, I saw an ad on my Facebook stream for a Waterstone Insolvencies, who I know Damien, who runs Waterstone Insolvencies, and an ad came onto my Facebook page for Damien at Waterstone Insolvencies for dealing with the insolvencies of your company. I said, how coincidental that our Facebook feeds are suddenly full of insolvency ads, because I tell you what, it's going to be one of the growth industries of 2020.
You're right. Yes.
Yeah.
So what? I know that today you're in tidying up your premises and trying to work out some different ideas for comedians. How are you going to tackle this over? What? Because I mean, how long is it going to be? Is it going to be a month? Is it going to be a couple of months?
A few weeks ago, I just shared a thought as we went into lockdown. But just before lockdown, I sort of said to people that that there's no script for this. and this is very much a comedy thing, as much what the lingo I'm using is very much comedy lingo, but it pretty much applies to everyone out there, from a very personal point of view, from a business point of view, whatever you're into. There's no script for this. This isn't even a once in a lifetime thing. We're about to experience something which is not even, no one can even refer to in history.
No.
Maybe since the plague or the Spanish flu. I don't know. I don't know what it was like back then. I wasn't around in 1918. But we're about to experience something which is totally unique. There's no script. And if there's no script, that means you have to improvise. Any comedian will tell you, if you haven't got a script, but you're on stage and you've got to do something about it, you have to improvise. And that is what we're all doing. We are improvising. So to give you an example, I am currently gutting a couple of spaces at the Classic, which one of them is my office and another one is a storeroom. And I'm currently gutting them of everything that's in them. I certainly don't need an office anymore. You can do that on your phone nowadays. And I'm turning them into new media suites and spaces, so that as soon as we're off level 4, which of course, because we're on level 4, I can't do much at the moment other than stuff on my own. Once we go down to level 3 or level 2, I can start getting a group together in these places to produce comedy for streaming and online.
How are you going to monetize that, though? How are they going to make a living?
Look, there's so many different ways. I'm still exploring that.
Yes.
There's the method of donation, which is just, this is what we're doing. If you think this is worth anything, give us $1. Give us $1, give us $5.
Yes.
One thing I can do is I can say, give us $10 for what you're watching right now, and I'll give you a ticket to live comedy when we're back online downstairs. So
well, have you heard of David Downs? David Downs, I think one of the smartest guys I've ever met in my life, and
a founding chairman of Comedy Fest. Yes.
Yes, and he is. I'm pretty sure it was David that set it up with the whole cafe thing. So you make a donation, keep the cafe going, and then you get a coffee down the track. Yeah.
Yep. We're setting that up at the moment, so people will be able to buy a virtual ticket to comedy. The premium ticket will be the very first night back, which will have to be one of the most incredible nights of comedy that you will ever see at the Classic. Will be the first night back when we come off this lockdown, because the backup of incredibly funny ideas will be amazing.
Yeah.
And I'll just get as many comedians on stage that night as possible. Tickets will be a premium, but you can buy those premium tickets online very shortly.
Yes.
We don't know what date that is, of course. This is the funny thing. You'll be buying tickets to a comedy gig that has no date on it. It'll just be the first gig back at the Classic.
That is so New Zealand comedy.
You can donate to the Classic, and we will give you tickets to comedy in exchange for those donations. And it really depends on the extent of the donations as to how many comedy gigs I'll have to run to satisfy all those donations. But that is what we will do at the Classic.
I hope people actually jump on board and do that, because, you have worked, and others as well, have worked so incredibly hard to build this great comedy scene in New Zealand. And it's taken a lot of your time, hasn't it, really?
Oh yeah, it's a
real passion.
It was a labor of love. It's my lifestyle, though. I mean, hell, I could have been an accountant, Sean. I trained as an accountant when I was 17, 18 years of age. I left school to become an accountant. Imagine if I was still an accountant. That would be horrific for me. So in a way, I'm very, very thankful that I get to hang out with the craziest people in the country, creating comedy gigs for audiences. I've always thought that's the most amazing job to have, and I'm very, very privileged to have it. That's what I feel.
Well, you're very bloody good at it too. Hey, I know I would never ever ask you this, because it would be like, I'm not going to ask you who's your favorite comedian, especially New Zealand comedian, because that's like asking you which child do you love the most. So I'm never going to do that. But can you tell me a night of comedy, besides the funny business days, involving a couple of comedians where you were just sitting back and pissing yourself and going, shit, this is why I've got this job. This is just fantastic.
There are a few vintage nights at the Classic over the years. One of the first ones, early ones, was a wonderful Irish comedian called Michael Smiley. And Michael Smiley came over and did shows back in the late 90s. And one of the shows he did at the Classic was when we were having a huge problem with power in Auckland. Like there was power cuts all over the place all the time. I can't remember what the reason was now, but so he was on stage at the Classic, and we suddenly had a power cut, and the whole room went black, and the stage went black, and everything went black. And he said, "I've always wanted to do this," and he took his clothes off on stage. And of course, you could actually see what he was doing, but he was being very coy about it. He said, "I've always wanted to be a stripper, and this is the golden opportunity to do it." So he actually stripped off all his clothes on stage, and then just as he finished, he picked up his clothes and he turned around to go off stage, and all the power came back on. So all we got was this flash of a little white Irish bottom, as he hustled into the wings with this little white bottom wagon. And I just remember thinking that was a golden moment. And only could have come from that very spontaneous reaction to a massive power cut across Auckland. And that was one that sticks in my mind. And also a fabulous English comedian, Ross Noble, who he pretty much changed the way we looked at a lot of stand-up comedy when he came. The very first time he performed at the Classic, I had seen him in Edinburgh, and I knew what the audiences were about to see. And sometimes that's the real golden moments, is when I've chosen an act from the Edinburgh Fringe to come out to New Zealand, and you know what they're capable of, and you get to sit on the opening night and see them for the first time performing to New Zealand audiences, and seeing New Zealand audiences reacting the same way I did when I first saw them in Edinburgh.
Can you still actually enjoy sitting down and watching comedy, or do you find that your mind starts to race and analyze how they're doing stuff and thinking about, God, how could I get this guy over to New Zealand? Or can you just flick on Netflix, watch a stand-up special and just laugh like everybody else?
I don't watch a lot of live comedy on TV, and only because I don't have to, because I can see so much live comedy at the Classic four or 5 nights a week. I mean, I go to the Classic at least 2 nights a week. Every Monday is raw, open mic. So I get to see 10, 11, 12 people doing their first gigs on a Monday night. Now, for most people, they might think, oh, God, that must be horrific, having to sit through a whole lot of amateurs. But of course it's not, because you feel like a gold miner. In that you're digging away, and every so often you find that little seam of gold, and you go, oh my God, this person could be the next big thing. They're not the next big thing in that moment, but they could be. You can see that that's talent, the maybe the raw material that is going to make them great. And then, of course, I have a role in helping them become that comedian later on. And of course, we've had some great victories in New Zealand with comedians that started out on Monday Night Raw. So that is how this is the bit I love the most, is discovering fresh comedy in New Zealand. Effectively, that's what I got recognized for by the Queen, was my commitment to watching comedy probably 30, 40 Mondays of a year for 20 years. It's 23, 24 years now, every Monday night, watching raw comedy and helping people become something they weren't, which is, I love that process. And then Wednesday night is fresh comedy night, when I get to see the pros and regular comedians creating new comedy. And that in itself is an amazing process, watching people creating new comedy.
What's the state of female comedians coming through in the last 5 years? Are we getting really? Tell me more about that.
Fantastic. So many. I mean, it really is a positive thing. Is the diversity of our comedy in New Zealand now. It is incredible to see the numbers, and so talented. I mean, of course they are. They always were. We've always had some great female comedians. It's just that sometimes it takes a while for the rest of the industry to catch up with what we're doing at the Classic. And now, of course, they are catching up. There's so many good comedians. The tricky part for me, from a live point of view, is a lot of them are so busy, they're not always available to perform. This is my dilemma with the International Comedy Festival, is that I see some fantastic international female comedians, particularly when I'm at the Edinburgh Fringe, but they're like gold, and they're so in demand back home, where they can earn 4 or 5 times what we can pay them. So getting quality international female comedians to New Zealand is actually quite difficult, because they are much in demand where they are at the time. So getting them to come down to us is problematic. there's no shortage of men.
Yeah. Tell me about your working relationship with Paul Horan. Now, for people who aren't really, how many years do you guys work together? So people who don't know who Paul is, Paul was sort of a driving force in New Zealand comedy. I mean, without question. And he produced the recent series. What was the name? It was the History of New Zealand Comedy.
Funny As.
Funny As. Yeah, he produced this. Man, he did a great job of that, I thought. Just beautifully shot. Just fantastic.
And no one else could have done it. There's no one else in our industry who would have been anywhere near being able to make that. Yeah.
Yeah, but not just actually getting the right people, but just the way it was shot, the way it was. I thought it was edited really beautifully. So tell me about the relationship with you and Paul. How many years did you guys work together, and what did you sort of achieve together?
Well, Paul was a member of Facial DBX, which I mentioned merged with Funny Business to create Comedy Fest. So Paul was an original director of Comedy Fest, and it was pretty much Paul with the request of Willie and Dean from Funny Business. It was Paul that invited me on board along with David Downs and others to become part of Comedy Fest, become a non-performing member of the group. My role was, I was called Fillet Man. We all had roles. I was Fillet Man. My job was to fill the room with an audience and hopefully to fill the stage with comedians. So I had to go, I would help push the raw comedy and the rookies nights, and I would promote the comedy gigs to get the audiences. Paul was what we called Mr. Schmooze. Now, Mr. Schmooze was, he had all the connections. He knew all the right people. And if he didn't, he knew how to find them and he knew how to talk to them.
True.
That's Paul's skill is definitely in that area of expertise, is knowing people, connecting people, which is why he was the only one that could make Funny As. We had David Downs, and David was chairman of the board, and we used to say his was show me the money. Show me the money. David would say, why are we doing this? What's the bottom line? Where's the income? What's the profit? Because David's a really sensible businessman.
Yeah.
And you remember the remarkable Evan Blackman? I called Evan Build It Man because he's the one who could assemble the infrastructure. He was responsible mostly for a lot of the work that helped the classic be built. So, you know.
Yeah, he's a great guy. Oh, he's freezing. Maybe I shouldn't tell him. Maybe I should just carry on talking, and that would be a kind of funny way to end it. Yeah, I think we're going to end it, and that's beautiful that we end it like that with his face frozen like that. He is just a great guy. What he has done for New Zealand comedy is incredible, seriously, and he deserved that honor from the Queen. People like him, people like David Downs, Brendan Love. Oh, Brendan's going, no! Brendan Lovegrove's watching. Keep going. He wants us to keep going. And you're freezing up. And I think that I think we've lost him, which is a shame because although we got how long did we go for? Gone reasonably long time, but yes, great guy. Really, there's people like him. There's people like David Downs. Just going to keep talking, just in case he managed to join us back, because that would be good. Oh, hang on. I think he's gonna. Hey, we back?
I'm back. Yeah.
Oh, cool. We're live again.
Yeah.
Oh, that's cool. We've got Brendan Lovegrove on, and he is one of my favorite comedians, man. Like I like him as a person. I love him as a stand-up, and he's got huge amounts of integrity. Very funny guy. And when I book comedians for corporates, Brendan's got a hell of a lot of my work so far because I know that he's going to go and deliver the goods.
I would say that he's fail safe. If he's not funny 99 times out of 100 to an audience, then there's that other time, that 1 out of 100, there's something wrong with the audience.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think you're right. Hey, Brendan, since you're on board here, have you got a question for the godfather of comedy here? You can just post it in the comments. If anyone's got any questions for this man, drop them down in the comments and we'll put them to him. Can you talk about something else? You're enjoying your rosé there.
Yeah,
Anything
Sean,
else?
I'm going to ask you, what are you doing with your 4 weeks of lockdown? What changes are you going to make in 4 weeks?
I'm really lucky. So I'm in lockdown with my eldest son Ben, who has got a bloody dry sense of humor, and so that he's 15, so that keeps me entertained. I am kind of I think that word pivot is being overused a lot, but I'm pivoting to try and offer up some virtual offerings, so saying, hey, we can have a speaker come online and talk to your people. So I know they won't mind, but McDonald's New Zealand is one of my top clients, and so they've gone, yeah, let's do it. In fact, they've done it before as well. Great company to work for. Really like to look after their people. So we'll be doing some of that, but I've got to be honest. It is, I think I said to you, Friday 13th, everything just stopped. It was just cancelled.
Wasn't that amazing? Black Friday.
It was. There's this thing called there's this bit of software that I've got, and it's I think there's so many variations of it. It's not funny, but what happens is that if I send you a proposal and you open it, I get notified on my phone. It goes ding, and I see that Scott's having a look at the contract. And on Friday the 13th, it just went ding, 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 ding. It's all these people cancelling their bloody contracts. I was like, and he said, just don't answer the phone. Just ignore it. But I had to. And so it's pretty quiet, mate, at the moment. I've got to be honest with you. But we're looking at different things. We had a really great day today with some real interest and a couple of sales for virtual stuff. And I think stuff around mental health there's going to be a need there, because isolation is a bitch. It's really tough on people.
To a point. I look at it
to a point, maybe not everybody.
I think that this is a golden opportunity for people because you won't get an opportunity like this in your life very often. No one will. This is a very, very rare opportunity. It's not a problem. It's an opportunity. Yes. You're getting a clearing of your life where they're basically taking away everything you normally do every day. That work stuff, that whatever. They've taken it away and said, right, imagine a clear playing field ahead of you, and there's a clear horizon. What are you going to do with it? And then you start thinking about all the things you might want to be doing that you haven't been doing and now have time to do. And funny enough, I was riding my bike up Mount Eden last night, getting in that exercise that we're allowed to get. And I was pushing the bike up a bit of a steep patch, and there was this couple walking next to me. And they said, oh, a bit steep. And I said, yes, it is. This is the first night I've ridden up here. I said, but come back in 4 weeks and I'll be pedaling this. And I thought to myself, that's exactly the thing. It's you can't change a habit in a day. You can barely change a habit, a bad habit that is, or create a new habit in a week. But you give people 4 to 6 weeks, there's an opportunity to actually make serious changes that you can hang on to, and they can become good new habits. And I think you don't get this opportunity. People don't get this 4 to 6 weeks of clearing where you can actually prune your life and do something about it, and maybe have a chance to start some things afresh. So I think everyone should grab that opportunity.
That's a great way of looking at it, man. You're such a positive guy. This is from Brendan Lovegrove. Now that 7 days is over, is it over yet though? Haven't they just stripped it back?
It's not over. I think you'll find if you come back, it'll be back in August, and they'll have so much to talk about.
Yeah, it's not over yet, is it?
No, it's not. No, they've got a 10-week contract off in August.
How does Scotty see the comedy environment changing with all the big telestars now coming back onto the circuit?
They've come back onto a circuit that doesn't exist.
What circuit?
What circuit? What circuit?
Brendan, I just want to explain something to you. There's this thing going around called coronavirus. There's not a lot of but it's a fair question, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, good on them. They've got to get a gig yet. I mean, there's lots of competition because there's lots of match-fit comedians who aren't on television. Hell, Brendan Lovegrove isn't on TV that much. And, it's not often that he'll have to stand aside for anyone.
That's true. That is
Yeah,
very true.
the pressure goes on the TV comedians. If they're not match fit, they're going to have to get match fit before they can start taking gigs off comedians that are already out there working.
I mean, I was chatting to Lee Hart about this, and I know nothing about comedy, but what I have noticed over the years is that really being funny on TV and stand-up comedy are just totally different, aren't they? They really they are.
Well, that's what I said before. Yeah, some comedians, some live comedians don't suit TV.
Yeah,
and there are I know plenty of comedians. I call them internet comedians, and I've seen a few try and tour in New Zealand. They have massive followings on the internet. You know, they produce little viral stuff that goes on that gets 600,000 followers and stuff.
yeah,
And I'm coming to New Zealand to do my show and to my 600,000 web followers. And then you go and, well, you don't even go and see them live. I wouldn't, because I know they've got no act, because I have contacts in the industry that can tell me exactly what kind of live act anyone has. So when I hear about one of these people coming to New Zealand with 600,000 followers, and they do sell out, but their live show is awful because they're not live performers. They're great in front of a webcam doing their funny little sketches and their little skits and things. And good luck to them for doing that. And if they can monetize it, good luck to them. But don't going into a live stage saying I'm a live comedian, because you're not. When they try, I get really upset at people passing themselves off as a live comedian.
Yeah, absolutely right. Are you a Ricky Gervais fan? I asked Lee this the other day too. I'm a massive fan. We can give him.
Yeah, I appreciate what he does enormously. I mean, the guy, he's a very clever man. It's just that his comedy is what we call cringe comedy. And of course, some people don't realize where the act stops and the man starts, like the difference between the person and the act. So they think he is the act. And he has a mixed reputation in England. There are comedians who hate him, and there are others that admire him. Michael McIntyre, I think, is one of the I think he's one of the funniest comedians out there. And I've seen him live on numerous occasions. But I know a lot of British comedians who don't like Michael McIntyre because they sort of think that he's sold out to commercial interests. And I went, no, he just made a truckload of money from being a very, very good comedian. But he's just not everyone's cup of tea. But fortunately, he is a very commercial comedian. And I don't think there's anything wrong with being commercial.
No.
I don't think every comedian needs to be angry and angsty or fringy.
No, and people need to make a living. I mean, like when I book comedians, they're usually for corporates, and part of you wants to go, hey, just do your thing and just go crazy. But the reality is,
you don't want that phone call on Monday morning.
I do not want that phone call. I do not want that phone call.
Send me. That was awful. And I've been on the receiving end of that famous funny business gig that we did. Funny Business was the only sort of comedy group around, and we got booked by Rank Xerox to do their Christmas party. And there were two performers there was the Queen City Big Band providing music and entertainment, and there was Funny Business doing the entertainment. And we were sort of like doing sketches. And for Rank Xerox, big corporate gig, I think it was the Sheraton Hotel, and Dean Butler went out on stage to do one of his famous bits of comedy, which was a personal column. He said, I put an ad in the personal columns the other day. It said, shy, retiring gentleman who walks in the park, strolls on the beach, candlelight dinner, pussycats, looking for like-minded women. And he only got one reply from a 74-year-old woman, but good route though. And that was his punchline. She was a good route though. And he did that at the Rank Xerox Christmas party. And I don't think the gentleman who booked us could have reached backstage faster. And he just did the old finger across the throat thing. Like, that's it, finger across the throat. That's the end of your act tonight. And we sheepishly left through the stage door. And I can't even remember if we got paid. So.
How about Sugar and Spice? When did they do their thing? Was that mostly at Kitty O'Brien's, or was that at the Classic?
Kitty O'Brien's, and when we opened the Classic, yes, they were so original. Isn't it amazing that Sugar and Spice was so original that we've never had anything like it since? Despite the fact that they were so inspiring there were no performers who could emulate them.
No.
So there was nothing like them, and there hasn't been anything since. You know, Flight of the Conchords are a duo, but they're nothing like Sugar and Spice. So we were very privileged to have.
You would go to work and people would be talking about Sugar, and they wouldn't be talking about a TV program. They would be talking about Sugar and Spice. Oh my God, have you seen Sugar and Spice?
Well, picture this: two gentlemen in fluorescent sort of tie-dye tights on stage, no shirts on, with just Shakespearean ruffs around their neck, reciting Shakespeare, but not real Shakespeare, sort of made-up Shakespeare. One of them reciting it while the other one opens a tin of baked beans and pours it into the tights of the other person on stage. And then as the person, as I think it was Jason, continued to recite Shakespeare, baked beans made their way down through his tights and then started to drip out of a hole in his crotch onto the stage floor, just like goat's poos. Baked beans dripping out of a hole in tights, reciting Shakespeare. Now, that was the case if you really had to be there, because if you went to work on Monday morning and said, you'll never guess what I saw on Friday night on the show, because people would just look at you and go, what? But I can tell you what, it was very funny at the time.
And Mike King at Kelly O'Brien's, that he was in his element then. Man, he was good.
Yep, he turned up. He said, I refuse to do your open mic, your rookies night. Just put me on a pro night. And if I'm not funny, I'll buy everyone in the bar a drink and you'll never hear from me again. That was how he debuted.
Right.
Yeah,
seriously.
Yep.
Was it his first gig?
Yeah, he said, I won't do a rookies night. He said, I know how to do this. I've seen you doing it. Some of you aren't very good at it. And he said, just put me on a pro night. And he said, if I'm no good, I'll buy everyone in the bar a drink. You'll never hear from me again. That was his opening.
And was it a good first opening?
He knew exactly what he was doing. He was brilliant.
Yeah. And look what he's doing now with his life. I mean, just so proud of him. I mean, he's just an incredible guy. Doesn't he?
Yeah. Sometimes you can have a conversation with him and it can be exhausting. We actually were planning this big, like he doesn't stop. As soon as the lockdown came, he came to me with a solution to his problem for the fact that he wanted to put on the gumboot gig. He wanted to put on a live gig for fundraising, or even just for awareness of. And we looked at it, and we looked at the parameters of the stage 4 lockdown, and realized that it just wasn't be feasible because we couldn't get all the people in a room to put on any kind of gig. But he didn't stop. He's relentless. He's incredible.
Yeah. Hey, I better go and put on dinner for Ben.
Good man.
It's funny because I had this chat with I said to you that the client is McDonald's, and the speaker was, we were doing a bit of prep, and the speaker was using these McDonald's analogies, and he was saying, it's a bit like a kiwi burger with the beetroot, and all of a sudden I was going, man, I could really do with a kiwi burger right now. I was like salivating. I was going, kiwi, how long is it going to be until McDonald's is open again? Bloody hell. Yeah.
And you just could make your own.
Well, that's true. And I did make burgers the other day, and they were very,
you can
very
make, if you actually look at the ingredients of a kiwi burger,
beetroot.
But a beetroot. That's all it is. You can do that.
It's not. It's a bloody good burger, actually. What say? Hey, thank you so much. And thanks for everything you've done, seriously, for New Zealand comedy. I mean that really sincerely, because I can remember those. I'm old enough to remember those early days. Not going right back to facial DBX or anything like that, but those early days where it was kind of similar to getting more New Zealand music on radio stations. It was really just trying to get people to get their head round, to go out and watch comedy. And considering, there was that bumpy start to begin with the classic, and you just kept on going. You're very resilient, very focused, very smart businessman. And now we've got this bloody amazing platform where, you're nurturing all these comedians through, and it's really incredible what you've done. It really is. And you deserve to have that title of Godfather of New Zealand comedy, because that's what you are, my friend. So thanks very much for your time.
Yeah, thanks, Sean. And good luck over the next 4 weeks. Make a difference.
All right, brother. I will. Thank you very much.
Thanks, mate. See ya.
Take it easy.
Cheers.